Here, hold on. Sure as heck is. I'm gonna say right. This is for fourth period. I want to give them the lesson that I couldn't provide during the actual fourth period. It comes right down to this. I am no good in that class. I'm good by the time you guys get here, but by the time they get here, I've had to shift gears twice already. And how long can you actually keep that brain focus going? You know, it can be tough. And I am so jonesing for some food and a break. And I'm trying to think, okay, I did that. I got everything I wanted to do done in there. Okay, now it's time for E&M. Okay, I'll try and get everything I want to get done in there. And then we get off some tangent, and they love it when I'm on a tangent. And then, okay, now it's the other one comes in, and there's all this whispering in the back. It just makes me crazy. Makes me crazy. I've got a pretty wide range of students in the class too. So I need to be better for them, but I'm just not. And by the time you guys get here, I figured out what I make my mistakes on. I do better. So you guys, well, you might not believe it, but you guys get the better of the instruction. And then seventh period comes here on a Friday. Let me just say, I got to hurry my stuff up because they are done by like 3:01. So uniform circular motion. Yesterday we did a bunch of different kinds of attempts at problems. I think you guys saw kind of some of the range. So we did the over the dip and under the dip problem. We did the spinning thing, right? We got the spinning thing problem. Did we finish that one in class? So we did quite a few. Did we do the car making a left-hand turn? Friction's holding on the ground. All right. So today I'm going to turn it up a little bit, and I want to bring up two. I'm going to do these in a different order than I did fourth period, because I think I went with one that was too challenging fourth period right off the bat. So I'm going to stick with one that's a little bit straightforward. Before I do that, I'm going to see if you were actually paying attention yesterday. And to do that, I have a very straightforward, run-of-the-mill kind of question, which means, we're going to separate the people who can do this from people who can't. And we try to have a quiz on this kind of stuff too soon. I'm going to have homework for you guys this weekend. I know, you're so excited. It's just mastering. It's not really anything important, right? That's what a kid told me yesterday from AP1. I can do all the mastering, but I did terrible on the test. So I had to share with them. The mastering kind of is dumb, but you have to have some kind of homework. So there it is. What's that? I don't know, nothing. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to do something. Might as well be physics. All right, so you want to see my picture? What I've drawn? It is an amazing, this is like a piece of art. It is not a monkey in a tree. The tree monkey is good. I can't believe you guys are coming, really ripping on my tree monkey. I'm very frustrated with you for ripping on my tree monkey. Hold on, I've got to say that I am the spotlight video. Everybody must watch it. If I don't say I'm the spotlight video on Zoom, every time somebody makes a noise and coughs, it puts a video of them up on the screen. So now I'm spotlight. They can't, they're all little boxes and I'm the biggest box, and that's the way I like it. So are we good for the reach for the stars, aim for the monkey? There's like a shirt idea. Is that worth buying? I've got some great funny ideas and some little things I want to hide in the pictures and stuff. I have some good ideas this year. I'm thinking about your shirt idea is going to be done first. It might even be done this weekend. And then we'll adjust it as needed. I'm not getting it approved, so you might get told you can't wear it to school. Wear it anyways. What are they going to do? Besides, you'll probably be quarantined by the end of the week anyway, so yeah, there it is. All right, so simple question for all of you. What is the minimum velocity necessary to be able to stay on the inside of that loop? The minimum velocity necessary to stay on the inside of that loop. You should have no difficulty doing this. This is like a 2-minute problem. What are they watching over there? Yes, sir. What's that? That does not matter. We have a new deal with Kyle. I need to let this class in on. When Kyle puts his hand in the air, and I decide to recognize him, because you guys might not believe this, I do actually like Kyle, but when he puts his hand in the air and I do decide to recognize him, if the first thing he says is he doesn't get to say anything else. That's his question. And I address that and we move on, and he has forfeited his question. So I would love to extend that to the rest of you, but you haven't really, see, I did the right there. You haven't had the chance to really put yourself in a position to have to watch Kyle have his hand up, call on him, and find out he really was not ready to talk. He had not formulated what he wanted to say. He just wanted to make sure he got in there. And he knew there was an idea on the back of his head, but it has not made it to the front yet. And so he wants me to wait for him to come to that conclusion. All right, we done yet? You should be done by now. You should be done by now. If you're not done by now, you're taking way too long. I see people still writing, so I will do something I am not good at. I will be patient. People at home, I'm thinking about flipping the script. Maybe next week I'll just stay home all week and project myself into the classroom, and then I could be like you guys. I think that sounds like a great idea. I told them a secret. It's not as good a secret as you probably want. I told them next week I'll just spend the whole week at home and set this all up so that you have to see me from home. And I'll be like them. And so I'll be at home, but here, like this. I thought it was kind of funny because I can talk to the speakers too. I can have it all set up. If I'm ever absent, that's exactly what I'm going to do right there from the hospital. All right. That's all the time you get. Here we go. When I look at this vehicle, I'm expecting that there is a couple of forces acting on it. And I have an issue with my AP1 students right now in that they really don't understand this whole concept that you have to follow the rules for the way the forces are acting on an object. And those rules kind of pervade. You wouldn't be here if you had the trouble they're having. They'll eventually get over it. And some of you did have this trouble, that when I draw these forces in, I don't get to just decide how to draw them. There's a set of rules. I have to follow those rules. And the normal force can only act in this direction on the vehicle. Now, if the wheels are like a roller coaster, actual roller coaster, where they clamp the wheels to the track, and then, yeah, the normal force could flip and be in the other direction. But that's not what I said. This car's on the inside of the track. I want to make sure it stays that way. These are the couple of forces that are acting on it. And they act both towards the center of rotation, which means that the net force is going to equal normal plus weight. And they are both they're both pointing towards the center, and the system is unbalanced. So normal plus weight is going to equal mv squared over r. What does that mean for the question? Well, one of these is a responding force. It reacts to what happens, and one of these isn't. One of these is fixed. Now, when you look at this relationship, it might not be obvious that there is an absolute minimum, but there is. That absolute minimum is right here. Because there's no way the normal force can respond by becoming negative. When I look at this, in order for there to actually be equality, the left side has to be equal to the right side. Now, I know that that's obvious. That seems obvious. But what's missing from maybe your understanding is this is the condition that has to be met. This is what you have to work with. They are not the same. They don't have to be equal. What I mean by that is, if this side doesn't meet the requirements, then there will not be circular motion. I mean, the forces are still going to accelerate it, but they're not going to allow the object to travel in a circular path. So something else will happen. The acceleration will treat this object differently. But as long as those conditions are met, the object can travel in a circle. And that's the way you need to approach this, that the circle isn't necessary. The rule of Newton's laws has to be followed. Now, if the unbalanced force is proportional to this mv squared over r, then yes, your object can travel in a circle, you're okay. Which means that, well, the normal force can get as big as I want it, but it can't get negative. Which means that the minimum is when the only thing causing the object to travel in the circular path is gravity. So mg equals mv squared over r. And at that point, this is not particularly hard, square root of gr, and I don't think there's a whole lot here that's interesting. At least not particularly interesting to me. On the other hand, if the object's going slower, then we're not in circular motion anymore. It doesn't mean that it's not accelerating. It's just not in circular motion. It means the velocity to the left is not great enough for it to stay in the track. It'll simply be a projectile. It's going to have too small a horizontal velocity for the acceleration that is acting on it. So if you go slower than this, then your horizontal component of the velocity doesn't keep up with the change in the y velocity. And your object merely falls in a parabolic path underneath the circular track. To get by on this in a lot of theme parks, because making a circular track like this, it's tough. It's tough because generally this track requires a much greater starting height to get the velocity that you need to go through the circle. Yes, sir.
So you're saying that that is the minimum velocity to stay in circular motion. Why is it not like greater than that? Like,
Well, you can be greater than that.
I know it can be greater than that, but there's a range where things through the motion. But I don't get how that wouldn't come off if normal force is zero. Because if normal force is zero, then it's not.
Well, normal force is zero is a threshold again. So technically, we should be able to make it into circular motion right there. And what that would mean is that we would move to the next part of the track over here. And at that point, we would reassess whether you have enough velocity to maintain your motion through the track. But at this point, we know a little more about physics. We know that it's down a little bit, which means it has more kinetic energy, which probably is enough to make it through. So there might be this one point where it's not touching the track or doesn't need the track, but probably it'll catch on to the track after this. We would never design a roller coaster like this. Okay, you guys have been on roller coasters. And if you did the trick that I asked you to do at Busch Gardens last year, you understand that this is not what the Scorpion does. So how many of you did the trick I talked about last year? I didn't talk about it in every class, so I might not have told you. It's the quarter trick, the coin trick, right? Hold the coin in your hand, the coin stays in your hand throughout the entire Scorpion ride. Well, until maybe the end when you hit the brakes and it shoots out in front of your hand. But if you hold on, if you just hold your hand open, put it right in the palm, the quarter's gonna stay there the whole time. And part of the reason is that you don't ever have a point where the normal force is zero on that rod. The closest you get to the normal force is zero is when you go through the loop and you make the ups, that little hill right there. That's the closest you ever get to it. When you're at the top of the ride here, you feel your weight. Think about what that means. How fast must you actually be going in Scorpion if you feel your weight at the top of the loop? I asked, actually asking for people to figure it out. And it's not twice as fast. You can do it real quick. Yeah, it'll take you like 30 seconds if you have this written in front of you. All right, I'm done. You done? If you want to experience your weight, then the normal force has to be equal to your weight. Your experience of weight is the normal force. So square root of 2gr. If I go that fast, I'll feel my weight. And that's what the Scorpion does. You feel your weight at the top of the loop. It's a little less. It's about 50% of your weight, but it's enough. Most of the time on most roller coasters, they do not want you coming off the seat at the top of a loop. For whatever reason, they really are not looking for that part of the experience. They want you to come away from your seat when you go over the top of a hill. That's what they want. But when they design these roller coasters, they don't design them for you ever to approach a point where the normal force at the top of a loop is zero. Because generally, structurally, there's a chance the cars, under certain conditions, won't make it over the loop. And it's not because of this. We are forgetting a whole bunch of things when we do this problem the way we're doing it right now. And I'm getting a little off track here, but I have some future engineers here. This problem is completely flawed. And the reason is because you are never in one car in a roller coaster. A roller coaster is an entire train of cars, which means the center of mass of the system never makes it to the top of the loop. The center of mass of the system is always traveling underneath the highest point. So when we actually make the calculation as a person who is working on creating a roller coaster, the center of mass of the system might make it to here, even though the cars are higher than that. So you can actually have a lower velocity, but the cars can still traverse the course because your center of mass is what has to make it through the course, not the trains themselves. So keep in mind that we are leaving out pieces of physics here, and we're kind of taking the pieces that you are capable of working with right now, and we're talking about those. But if you really want to get into this, and I think we should sometime, recognize that some of these rides are more fun than others just because of where you sit on the track. Where are you going to be going over the top of that loop fastest? And where will you be slowest? You'll be slowest if you're in the middle. So if you want the most chance of feeling like you're coming out of your seat, sit in the very middle, because that's when the center of mass is going to be at the top, and you'll have the least amount of kinetic energy in the system. And you'll feel the most like you're coming out of your chairs. But nobody ever wants that seat. They want this one, and they want this one. Why? Well, because front is front. It's front. I can get that. You're right there, especially on any one where your feet hang. I want to be in the front. I would never sit in the second, third row of SheiKra. Never. Well, it's why you're just wasting your time. You want to sit front, and you really want to enjoy it front, all the way to the left or all the way to the right. That's the I want to die seat right there. Now, you sit in the back middle. That's like saying, why even bother? SheiKra's already kind of lame. You got to ramp up the fear. But the truth is, people want to sit in the back because the back is going to go the fastest at the top of that loop. You whip around the corners generally because by then the center of mass has already gotten the most amount of kinetic energy. So the back tends to whip through things a little bit better. You get a little more G-forces on some of the turns. You get a little bit more G-forces on any of the bottom of the hills. The back part really is pretty dynamic, but the middle is going to give you the chance to feel the least amount of weight. So anyways, enough of the roller coaster dynamics. Let's go to a problem that's actually hard now. You ready for something hard? I'm ready for something hard. This is what I want to talk to you about. And the reason why I want to talk about this question is because it's actually hard. And when I framed it in fourth period, it did not go well. So I'm hoping to do a better job framing it here. This was actually on the AP exam though. So, hard or not, framing it poorly or not, this is a challenging question, and we really do need to see it. Although you can't see what I just drew, so clearly you're not going to see that. Let me fix it. Come on, Mr. Shelton, do better. Be better at your little drawing tools. There we go. Okay, so the original problem had a 3/4 of a circular track. So we are looking top down on a circular track. Like it was sitting flat on the table. And I can't begin to really draw what this has to look like, but I'm going to do my best. And if you make fun of it, I promise to make sure your grade reflects how I feel about you. So imagine a ring like this, like horizontally, but it's only 3/4 of the ring, and a box could pass through it. Does that make sense? Can you envision this now? So the way the problem was written is the box came right off of a came off of a ramp and went right into this circular track. So when it met the circular track, it entered the circular track with an initial velocity of v naught. For this instant, when it gets into the track, can you find an expression for the normal force from the track on the block in terms of m, v naught, g, and let's go with radius of the track, r? An expression for the normal force from the track on the car in terms of those variables. This is not the hard question. This is the obvious question. And I know you don't feel that way. But I believe in you. All right, that really is sufficient time. If you know what you're doing, you've already made a kind of a run at it. If you don't know what you're doing, just advance the car a little bit, just so you can understand that once it's here, it's experiencing two normal forces. One is from the floor upwards out of the page, and one is from the wall acting towards the center. This is what causes the box to turn in that circle. I know it's hard to envision this, which is why I'm taking the reins a little bit more, but does everybody now understand what I mean? Because if you don't, you should ask. I'm looking at confused Sana face. Do you have the vision of what the problem is doing?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Can you explain the two normal forces a little bit more?
Sure. Let's recognize that we are looking, like we're above the table looking down right here. That part you understand? Okay, so if I was watching the box from the side and the track wall was curving around, so that my box is here, but the track wall is kind of curving around, right? And that's my box. There'd be a normal force coming this way from the wall. And there's also going to be a normal force straight up from the floor. Now, is that helping a little bit? Yes.
I'm understanding what's going on, but you have to make two free body diagrams because you have like looking at it from bird's eye view, you have there, and then you also have like weight and normal.
You're right. So how do you draw this free body diagram? On the actual, this is from an actual exam, and the way in which they framed the problem, they used a type of notation that allows us to draw vectors that go into and out of the plane. There's a notation for that. And we're not going to get into it too much. What I would do on a test is I would say, here's a top-down, draw all of the forces that are in the horizontal plane. And then I would give you one from the side and say, now draw all the forces that are in the vertical plane. And that's one of the ways they've done it on the exam. So like we could say normal and weight here, and then this is from the ground, and then there's normal from the wall. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Now, this one shouldn't have been too tough after you got past that, orienting yourself to a three-dimensional idea. And hopefully you found that, well, it's just got to say normal force equals m v naught squared over r. That's all you had to do. Here's the rub. The actual question said that the floor was frictionless, but the wall had a coefficient of friction of mu k between the block and the wall. Now, here's where we're going to take a few minutes pause, because I want you to think of what that really means. No diagrams, no physics formulas. Think what that is going to do to the physical situation that we have. And I'm going to pause everything because you really need to Sure as heck is, that's right. Now, we have a acceleration that's slowing the block down. And the result of slowing it down is to reduce the normal force, which is going to result in reducing the frictional force, which is going to change the acceleration, which is still slowing the block down, but now it's slowing the block down a little bit less. But the block is still slowing down. Now, this is a unique situation, one that is not going to be able to look like any motion equation we've ever looked at. And on the exam, you were asked to come up with the motion equation that would describe the motion of the block. Tough question. However, and I want to be very clear about this, students who saw this question kind of freak out and they get perplexed, but none of that should change the set of steps necessary to apply Newton's laws to this problem. So let's apply Newton's laws to the problem. I know we've got ourselves in a weird kind of coordinate system where we're kind of frustrated because it's not like we're used to, but I don't think anybody in the room can deny that the friction has to be this way. Right? It's got to be parallel to the track, and that's parallel to the track at that point. And it's perpendicular to the normal force. Which means I can state that in the, we'll have to say that this is the positive, maybe X direction, and this, the positive Y direction. I want to make the forward progress of the block the positive direction because I know my friction has to be negative so that my acceleration is slowing the block down. I'm trying to keep all of these things in my head. So I'm making the direction of motion of the block positive. And I'm going to say that that's going to equal MAT for tangential. You guys can't see the red on that projector, so MAT for tangential. And what force is that? That is friction. So this was the normal force when it first entered the arena. But now that it's been, in the arena for a little bit, I'm going to get rid of that little naught because we know that velocity is going to change. If only there was a way to kind of relate the friction and the normal force. If only there was a way that we could somehow bring those two things together so we might be able to kind of analyze. If only there was a way. Now, I'm going to add this negative sign here to remind us that the friction is in the opposite direction of the direction of motion. And I'm going to think, well, maybe there is a way that we could bring these two sides together. So that's going to mean negative MAT equals MV squared over R. So I'm wondering, is it possible that you could make a differential equation to describe the velocity of the block? What's that? I forgot a mu. Thank you. How about I just get rid of that pesky M and replace the mu? That way I have enough space. There we go. So can you turn this into a differential equation? I mean, I really hope so. Because if you can make it this far, all the things we just did, none of it's huge. Maybe you would have forgot this negative sign. You might have. I can empathize with that. That's a lot to keep track of. But finding a net force in the X, net force in the Y, not terrible. Maybe. But now we move on and say, okay, all I have to do to make this a differential equation is dv dt equals mu k v squared over R. So the rate and change of velocity is equal to the velocity squared. That's going to be rough. I wonder what the velocity equation looks like. He said, knowing he's about to tell your students, let's find out what the velocity equation looks like. I think you can do it. I think you have enough math now. If nothing else, I think I've taught you the math that you need to do this. Now, I don't want to do this because I think this is where I lost the fourth period. I think getting to here was hard, and a lot of people's brains hurt when I got here. And I decided to press on because I thought we could do it. It's only going to take a few minutes. It took 10. And that's a lot. But I really want you guys to take this and find V as a function of T. I really want that. And I know we've just started talking about the whole splitting the differential and doing all that kind of differential equations, but it's not about circular motion anymore. It'd be about finding out this velocity. So I'm going to do this. You guys who are smarty smarts, think of this for just a minute. I reorganized it just a little bit. Is that okay? Put the constant together and stuff like that. All you have to do is split the derivative and then collect V on the same side as dV and T on the same side as dt. Now, if you want to finish this problem, I want you to. We're not going to do it in class right now. But you would have to take the antiderivative, or at this point, we're going to have to step up and start calling it what it is. And we have to understand how to do this. And I know that that's not something you've been taught yet, all of you. Especially because there are limits here. At time 0, our block had an initial velocity of v0. We have limits. This is physics. We know things. This isn't calculus where you don't know things. We know that there will be some future time when the block is moving and that it will have velocity v. We know that. These are physical constraints that we are aware of and we can work within. Now, yes, now from this point forward, it's find the antiderivative and apply your limits and create an equation. If you can do that, you should. If you can't do that because you're still wondering why the arrow pointed the way it did, you're probably done. You've probably reached the limit. So I'm going to let that bake. You guys take that home with you. How many more minutes do I have? So should I have a chance to continue to be your teacher next week? I'm just joking. I'll be here next week. I know. A bunch of you got really excited, like, oh, right. Oh. Then I want you to think about something for a moment. Fourth period was not impressed by this. And apparently you guys don't drive any place good. Well, I forgot. We're all on, we all don't go anywhere. There used to be these things called freeways. And on freeways, they would have overpasses. And sometimes the overpasses were kind of interesting, like over by Veterans in the airport, where it's like a big knot. You guys know what I'm talking about? Or maybe over by like 275, 375, and 175 in St. Pete, when you get over by the pier and the stadium. You get some fun, fun driving. Not careful, it's fun flying, but fun driving over there. One of the things I want to point out is all of the curved ramps are banked. They have a banked angle to them, so that when a car is on them, and you guys make fun of my car, I'm gonna be so angry. This is my car. It's got a bumper, and it's got a trunk, and there's got a place where the people are inside. That's a car. It's not a hamburger. It's a car all day long. Now, it's hard to envision this, and I can't really draw it in 3D except that the roadway is kind of going off like this. Does that help? Kinda? I can't draw it in 3D. It's just not going to happen. So here's my question. We bank the angles so that you don't have to rely on friction to make the turn. That's how they are designed. So the angle is related to how fast you can go through the turn without having friction. The idea is if it was a perfectly slick roadway, you would not slip off the road and fall off, that if you followed the prescribed speed, you would be able to navigate the roadway even if it was perfectly smooth and you had no traction. So you didn't go flying off the overpass and potentially, become a crater. Now, when you think about this for a moment, if we say that there's no friction, that friction is not a part of this problem, there are only two forces that act on the car. There's the weight and the normal force. And the car in this problem is going into the page or into the board. And you have to think about this for a moment. If there was no friction and the car wasn't moving, it would slide down the ramp. But now there is a portion of the unbalanced force in that direction towards the center of rotation. That's what we're going to talk about on Monday. All right, be looking for mastering homework. I'm so excited to give you guys mastering homework. So excited.